Hi, everyone, and welcome back to my haunted life. And today we start our new project with interviews, paranormal interviews. So, welcome my friend John. He
Hey
is
guys,
coming to us with paranormal stories from the road.
I
All
am.
right, John, tell us what you do for a living.
I am a truck driver. I travel over the road, which means I go from coast to coast, border to border.
Awesome. All right. And tell us your story and where you were.
Okay, I was actually coming down 212 through South Dakota, US 212 in South Dakota, and going into Wyoming and over to Montana. And right there on the Montana and Wyoming line, you have a parking area. And so I pulled over and parked. I was getting a nap. I was a little tired, and I don't know, something woke me up. It just something just woke me up, and it was staring at me through my passenger window.
Oh
It
my
was
God.
I, it was like I'm sitting up in my bunk like I am now, and I'm looking out my window, and it's eye levels even with mine. So it's got to be 8 foot off the ground,
Holy
and I'm
cow.
like, what is this? It looked human. It you know it wasn't doing anything abnormal, and then it kind of was a side profile. Then it turned and it looked at me, directly looked at me, and I noticed that it was human. And I'm like, what is going on? Is this a tall dude? Because I thought maybe somebody had climbed up on the side of my truck. So I got up, went to roll down the window, and it just missed it out. I stayed there the rest of that night, got up and went on into Seattle, Washington. I was coming back out, and that's about where my 11-hour break would be. And I was parked on the other side of the road, and it happened again. Same thing,
Wow.
something 8 foot or better, sitting there just looking at me like eye to eye. But this time I noticed that there was other misty like forms around, and I look, and it was horses and people right sitting on horses, and they just took off, like they were going to gallop off, and just disappeared. So I got to looking at where I was, and I was right outside of the area that the Sioux and the Cheyenne and the other Indian tribes from Wounded Knee had caught Custer and chased him into where they finally slaughtered him. And to this day, I believe those were the spirits of the Indian warriors waiting on Custer to come through.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, goosebumps, everything, because I didn't know what it was. And I can't tell you that's what it is officially. I can just tell you what I researched and found out, and that's the only plausible explanation I've got is that it's the warriors that were waiting on Custer and his troops. I think it was the Seventh Cavalry that
Wow.
that they slaughtered. So yeah, and that,
Wow.
that's 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 one of three different times that I've had something like that happen. Um, Another time, we were coming up over to Twin Sisters in Wyoming, and because me and my ex-wife used to team drive, and we stopped at Little America, and it's a little town, little truck stop town, and right outside of right over the Utah border, about 40 miles. And we parked in there. We're parked in the back because we got there kind of late, and all the front row was taken up. So we're towards the back, and we kept hearing something thumping on the side of the truck. Of course, it being a truck stop, I'm thinking might be a lady of the night. So I get up, look, there's nothing there. I get out, walk around, nothing there. And it kept thumping all night long. And the more I listened to it, the more it sounded like it was coming from the top of the roof, not the sides, but the roof. Something, a
Creepy.
bird. What kind of, it has to be a bird, some a night bird, an owl, something. So I get out and I flash my flashlight, and staring back at me is something that was like a gargoyle. That's the only
Wow.
best way I could put it. It had, long arms, leathery um, flaps from the arms and everything. And when it took off, it just took off and kind of glided and picked up the air currents and just kept on going. Now,
Wow.
I could have been sleep deprived. I don't know, but I've heard of other people having the same experience in that area. So
Interesting. I actually had a weird happening, almost like that, but no knocking. I
mhm.
was in Gobles, Michigan, and it was Halloween night. And I was driving my kids into town to go trick or treating, and they were in the back seat. And as I was driving, and we were in the woods because we were in a small town, so there was like a tunnel of trees. This thing flew over me. The wingspan was wider than my car, and I had to put my foot on the brake because all I could do was go
Right.
creepy, creepy, creepy. Yeah,
and
I believe it.
and these things, I mean, you try to make it make sense in your head. What is this? You
Yeah,
know, is it
yeah.
is it the Warriors? Is it, a gargoyle? So you put names to it, but it's not.
Hmm.
And I don't know how else to explain that to people.
Well, I researched a little bit, and not, recently I did, and apparently at around the same time in the same area, people were getting sightings of this thing, and they called it the Michigan Mothman.
Really,
Hmm.
I'll have to check that out since I live so
Yeah,
close to Michigan.
yeah, and
So,
that's where I'm from. And at the time, I was living in Gobles, Michigan when that happened,
mhm.
which is a small town.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah,
But
it's
eh,
near Kalamazoo.
okay, well, I've been through there several times.
Yeah,
So,
that's where I'm from. That area.
right. Now, the third time something happened was when we were going through West Virginia. You're talking about the Mothman. Now, this has nothing to do with Mothman, but it kind of reminded me of that. There was something or someone that was walking towards the truck, and I'm going down the road about 45, 50 miles an hour because I was on back road, kind of curvy, going up the mountains, and I had a load of pipe on, and they just stepped out in front of me and stood there, and the truck went right through them. Went
Wow.
right through them. It looked like a woman. I can't. It could have been a guy with long hair, but I just went right through him and kept going. And I actually saw him in the mirror behind me. And again, I'm team driving with my ex-wife, and she's sitting up front. She's screaming, pointing, and I look over, and there's a whole group of people along the side of the road there, same way. You know, they had form. They didn't have faces. We couldn't recognize whether it was male, female. It was like, for lack of a better word, a shadow people.
Wow.
It was just, and they were just standing there looking. And they didn't come any closer to us. We didn't go any closer to them. In fact, I took off and we go on down the road. But those are the three experiences that really stand out to
Wow.
me. And
That's crazy. I've never had that happen at night. Seeing the people on the side of the road, and you'd think that
yeah,
maybe. Of course, I always think, oh, I want to go drive north, but I'm terrified of Navajo Nation through the north
they're not too bad.
at night.
Well, I mean,
This is
I
this
used to
is the
go up.
Walker territory.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I used to go up to Flagstaff and jump on the U.S. highway and go up to the rim that way because up there in Page, Arizona, is up there on the rim, and we used to go
Yeah.
up there and pick up all the time. And you would hear noises at night when you come down off the rim and get there on the reservation itself. They have a couple of places that trucks can park, and you would
Mm,
hear noises at night that you could not explain. You would think, it's an animal, but there's no animal there making these noises.
yeah.
I can't say it's paranormal, but there's no other explanation because there was no animal around. There's no other human beings around. So I kind of get what you're saying, but yeah, I've never been freaked out there. The freakiest I've ever been, like I said, was on 212. They're at the Wyoming Montana line, and that's because I actually saw figures and horses, and you know,
Yeah. That's
and,
crazy.
and then they just disappeared. I mean,
What is
literally just
interesting,
disappeared.
what's really interesting about that is that they were looking at you through the window.
Yeah,
That is
and they were
crazy.
staring at they were staring at me. They knew I was there. This wasn't like a what
Residual.
residual.
Mhm.
This was like an active
Yeah,
interaction.
that's so
They
creepy.
knew I was there, and that's what made it even creepier. Was because
Yeah.
you know he's looking through the window on the back of his horse, and he's looking at me eye to eye, and he didn't blink or anything, but you could see the intelligence still there. I don't know how else to explain that. There was an intelligence there of some kind.
Yeah. Most of the time, they don't even pay attention to you. At least that's my experience.
Right. But I mean, he turned his head to look in.
Yeah, that's creepy. Super creepy.
So, yeah, I didn't stick around that night.
I
But,
bet.
Couple nights later, I come back and sleep, almost right across the street. So, I wasn't freaked out that much, but it was hard to swallow when it first happened, because I knew if I said anything to anybody about it, they're going to be like, "Oh man, that's just a big trucker's tale." But then I got to talking to other truck drivers, and I brought it up, and that ran that area, and they said, "Yeah, well, we've seen things like that. The white mist looking like horses, and or figures." So it happens more often than what most people know, but people are scared to talk about it because of the stigma.
Sure. So, yeah. That's crazy.
It is.
Wow.
Absolutely. Well, tell me something about you. What kind of paranormal besides the Mothman can you talk about?
I have a lot of things all the time. I'm one of those haunted people. That's why I changed this title on this channel to My Haunted Life, because it never ends. Not long ago, I'll tell you, I thought I was sleeping, but I was laying on my left side facing my closet, and I saw this woman just stand up and look at me. And she had wet hair, and it was dark brown, black, I don't know. But her hair was wet, and she was just looking at me. She didn't look angry. She didn't look mean. She didn't look upset. She just was there. And all of a sudden, Steve, my little pit bull, pops up from behind me, and I felt him pop up, and I look at him, and he's looking right at her, and he's like, starts barking his head off, and then all of a sudden he ducks really quick because he's scared, because he's afraid of everything. But then I knew I was awake. I thought I was sleeping. Right. So I wasn't really, affected by it because I thought I was sleeping. I thought it was a dream. And then when I realized, oh, wait, I am awake. Yeah. And then she just was there for a while and then back down and gone. But she rose up from the floor like she had been laying on the floor. And the creepy thing is, I have had several nights where I'm like, is something slinking around on the floor? Kind of trying to look. And I'm thinking, no, that's not possible. I never think about the paranormal could be slinking around the floor. Have you ever done
any investigating on the house, whether there was somebody there?
No. The reason I won't do an investigation is because our last really haunted house, we had an investigation on. Those people were terrified. They got pushed. They got shoved out of the house early. By the time they called us and said, okay, we're done. By the time we got back to the house, they had smoked an entire pack of cigarettes and put all the butts out in my yard. And then they blamed me for everything. You're the reason your house is haunted. Okay, well, this is probably true because I am who I am, and this started as a small child, which I don't usually discuss. Right. But when I was really little, my mom was terrified because she'd be home alone with me, and I'd be like, she put me to bed one time. I must have been 2, and I came down the stairs, and I told her I couldn't sleep because Nina wanted me to tell her something. And my mom's like, Nina? And I'm like, yes, Nina. Nina said blah, blah, blah. And I told my mom something. I don't know what. I'll have to ask her. Nina was my dad's cousin that he was close to that died in a car accident. She got decapitated a couple years before I was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never had anything like that happen. We lived in Virginia for a while, and some of the best memories I have is from that area, around Independence, Elk Creek area up in the mountains. And we bought an older house of 10 acres of land. We're going to give it a shot. And because my dad was a preacher at the time, and, he wanted us to have, that kind of a lifestyle. And we were in bed, and it's about this time of year, middle of February, 1st of March. And he goes, I hear something say John Howe, because that's my middle name, John and Howe. Or my family calls me John Howe. And it sounded like my dad. So I popped up thinking that he needed some help doing something. But it's like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. He's in bed snoring. I can hear him snore. And my brother's in bed. and I'm just, and I went to lay down, and then I hear this voice behind me say, "You are mine. You've always been mine." And then that was it.
Was it in your father's voice?
It was in my father's voice,
Yeah. Mimics.
and yeah, that's the first time I ever had anything like that happen in my life, and I was like, 14, 15 years old.
Yeah, kids, they try to claim kids all the time, but mimics are very, very common.
Yeah,
I don't hear
well,
my name called near as much as I used to.
yeah. But that's the first time it ever happened. It's happened several times. It happened not too long ago in the truck. I'm in a brand new truck from a different company than the one I'm with, and in bed asleep, and I hear John Howell, my dad's voice. My dad passed away in October last year. There's no way I heard his voice, but just as clear as day. And it's like somebody is there, and you feel their presence. They're not actually, you don't feel a touch or anything, but you feel their presence there. You pop up, and there's nothing there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in this semi.
Mm-hmm.
So and that happens to me several times a year. It's just something I don't know if you deal with it or not a lot, but it's just something you get used to,
Yeah,
and you just
I unfortunately just get used to the paranormal anyway because of
right.
who I am. I don't know what the difference is being born like this, but I have that. I have the gift of clairvoyance.
Okay.
There's another thing about me. It's unfortunate, but it's there,
Hmm.
and I rely on it heavily anymore. I've learned to rely on it heavily.
So what's your clairvoyance telling you about me? I know that's putting you on the spot. I'm sorry,
I got
but
no warnings.
that's good.
Yeah, that is good. Any warnings, and I'd be gone already. I pay attention
But
to it.
somebody told me one time that people that are clairvoyant or they interact a lot with the paranormal are
Hmm.
are conduits,
Yes.
and I've never understood that. Could you explain that to me? What a conduit?
It,
Because he claims that I am, you know,
you
uh,
could be, and that's probably why that thing when you were a kid imprinted on you and attached itself to you and probably follows you, and that's who you're hearing. Is that
okay,
could be a demon, could be a spirit. To me, I don't. Not all demons are bad. Not all angels are good. They're just other beings. So I don't fear demons. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And when people get possessed, it's not always demons. It's other spirits stepping into their bodies. It's not just,
right,
people assume that possession is always demonic possession. It is not.
no,
And unfortunately, there are some really bad spirits.
I can't
Um,
ever say that if that's what it is has ever done anything to me, bad, good, or anything. It's just there.
mm-hmm. Yeah. And they lay in wait. They wait because they want something from you. I don't know what it is. I don't always know, but it's like they're waiting for something, waiting for
Right,
their chance or whatever.
right.
I
Wow.
don't I don't know exactly, but I'll tell you what. Um, the most scared I've ever been in my entire life happened to my husband. I don't know
What
if I
happened?
told this story on here. We were in bed sleeping, and I was dead asleep, and I have a hard time sleeping, being older and menopausal. I don't sleep well at all. So I'm usually pretty up. At that point, though, I was dead out. I was tired. All of a sudden, he starts screaming next to me. I about fell out of the bed trying to get up. He's screaming, and he's like, terrified. So I get out. I'm pretty much fall out of the bed, get out, run over to his side of the bed, and I'm trying to wake him up. And his eyes are wide open, and it's like he's looking right through me. And he goes,
Hmm.
"She's coming! She's coming! She's here!" I about died. The way he said it, he was scared of this female spirit. I guess he doesn't
I
remember
guess.
a thing. I couldn't wake him
Yeah.
up. I couldn't get him out of it. But when he said she's here, the whole room felt like a different change. You know what I mean? So I knew
Hmm.
something was indeed there.
Have you ever been to anywhere like a home or a restaurant or a public building, and you walk in and you feel heavy?
Yes, all the
That is
time.
the And I try to explain this to my friends and my family, and it's like they're like, well, it's just maybe the room temperature, maybe the atmosphere of the people around you. I'm like, no, it's not. You can take all the people
Energy.
out.
You're feeling the
It's
energy. Yep.
right, and it's like where I am today. I've been here all day getting my truck worked on, and I've stayed outside of where I'm at. The only time I've gone in there is to get my keys, and you could palpably feel the
Yeah.
heaviness. There's some, and I'm in Oklahoma City, and you can feel that here. And it's not just the building; it's the grounds too
Yeah.
around it. And I'm wondering, and I know that Native Americans didn't originally, a lot of them did not come from here, but I'm wondering if there isn't something like that here.
Doesn't the Trail of
Maybe
Tears run through there?
it runs through here, yes, but
Yeah.
we're off of the main trail, and I'm kind of wondering if that, I don't know. It's and I can't explain it. I can go to the truck stop maybe about a half mile up the road, and it's totally gone. I can go to the restaurant half mile down this way, and it's totally gone. It's just this localized area. So
Well, other things could have taken place there. Something could have rooted itself in that area long before man did. You know what I'm saying?
that, and I get that because I'm not a Christian. Like I said, my dad was a preacher. I'm not a Christian. I never will claim to be anything like that. But I do believe in a circle of life. I believe that there's, we're just a part of that circle, and after a while, we get recycled back into the cycle, the living
Yep.
cycle, and
Yep.
then we pass away, and we're taken out of that. We're given time to rest and come back. But I also believe that the bad energy or the bad people that cause the bad energy, call it spirits, call it whatever you want to call it, is recycled back through at the same time. Just like the living people are.
That's called Hinduism, Buddhism.
Well, I don't know what it's called, but that's just the way I've always believed.
That's the
You
way the
know,
Hindus believe in the Buddhists. And that's the
right?
way I believe as well.
Okay, but it's there's too much pointing that way. I mean, not saying Christianity's wrong. I'm not knocking Christianity, but
Everybody's got their own religion, and
right, right.
they can believe what they want to believe, but that doesn't necessarily mean I agree with it either.
Me and and not knocking my dad because he was a preacher and everything, but he didn't believe in ghosts and spirits. And I said, but yet you talk to a being that you don't see. How's that not
Yeah.
the same? And
I don't understand how people believe in God and people believe in the devil and are scared of demons, but they don't
yep,
believe in the paranormal. That
I
makes
know, and
not sense to me.
it doesn't to me either. And maybe we got off track. Maybe you'll edit this out. but no, it's just I don't get a chance to talk about things like this with people every day. I do appreciate you having me and talking to me about it.
I
And
appreciate you coming on.
well, we've been trying to get this going for how many months now, and we
Yeah.
finally got the chance to. But it's just it's just a relief just to be able to talk to somebody that can relate, and you can tell they're genuinely relating to you because they're not having to make up anything. They're not grasping for stories or anything. It's just right off the bat, and I don't know how else to explain it. It's just a relief to be able to talk to somebody about it.
Well, anytime. I'm always up to hear what's going on.
Well, if anything happens again, I'll let you know.
I have stuff happen daily. We thought I'd end with the other house, and it hasn't. We have a crawl space over here in the hallway, which we relocated from my bedroom when we remodeled this house.
Right.
And a few weeks ago, Robert comes home and he goes, "Were you in the attic?" I'm like, "No, why the hell would I go up there? It's just a dusty crawl space full of probably scorpions and you know what I mean? I'm in Phoenix.
Right.
Bees, whatever else, and it's tiny. I don't store anything up there. I have sheds. I'm not, and I'm a claustrophobic, horrible claustrophobic. So
hmm
I'm like, no, the whole thing was slid and open. So here I'm
Wow.
home alone and that thing's open. Like, who the fuck opened that?
Yeah.
That creeps me out. I was terrified of that. I've been since that happened. If I get up in the middle of the
Right.
night, I automatically check it first.
I don't
Crazy.
have a crawl space. I got we live in a home that's manufactured, and we sit way off the ground. And woke up one night, no wind, No, nothing's been going on. And I look out there, and all my insulation that we have packed against the siding there, because in Northeast Indiana, it's cold during the winter. So we try to keep all the warmth underneath the trailer if we can.
Sure.
All the boards are still up. All the insulation is spread out in the yard. All the boards are still up. And I'm like, who would do just that?
Mm-hmm.
If it was a wind, it would take out the underpinning, but it didn't even touch the underpinning. It just took all the insulation behind the underpinning. So,
That's weird.
yeah.
Again, where we are, I don't know the whole history, but this house was built in 1968. The only thing I do know, and I found out from the neighbor before she passed away in that house next door, but she told me my daughter-in-law had just given birth to my granddaughter, Rory, and they were here. She got scared because she was walking past my room and she saw a lady in her 30s in my mirror looking at her. So she grabbed my granddaughter, went out into the driveway, and would refuse to come back in the house until I got home. And I was telling my neighbor about it, and she was so sweet. She says, "Oh, well, tell her not to worry. It's just Deborah. And Deborah's a nice lady." And I looked at her and I go, "What do you mean, Deborah?" And she said, "Oh, a lady that owned your house a couple owners back. She died. She died in that house in your bedroom." And I said, "I knew it. I knew somebody was there."
What a way to find out, right?
I know, right? I knew somebody was there because that lady is so comforting. And I remember when I turned 40, I had to have a complete hysterectomy, and I was terrified. And the night before the hysterectomy, I closed myself in that bedroom. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was all about meditation and trying to stay calm. And I felt her there. She was with me the whole time. Then when we were remodeling the house and we had to move everything out of the house, she thought we were moving. She got upset. And I said, no, we're staying. We're not going anywhere. We're remodeling. I assured her. And so she sticks around, and she is a caretaker. Let me tell you, when I had to have brain surgery, again, I stayed in my room a lot of the time healing, and she was there along with my grandmas, which my daughter was like, "Your grandmas are freaking bossy, all of them." And I said, "What do you mean?" And that's my daughter, Stephanie. And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, when you had brain surgery, we stayed the first week with you," which I barely remember, but she stayed in this room with her wife. And she said, every time it was getting time for your pain meds, and before my alarm would go off, your grandmas would shut the TV off that we were watching, flick on all the lights until we got up to get your pain meds.
Wow.
Yep, she said it happened every time, like on cue. And I believe that because I am a lot like all of my grandmas, and they were all very strong, bossy, take charge women. And that's how we are.
Well, I mean, some people are that way, and there's nothing. Yeah. But I'm glad to know that we take our characteristics with us, and and that's kind of comforting, because some people think I'm really dry and that I'm, not. I don't know. I don't like to have. I don't go out and party. I don't go out to bars and drink. I don't do any of that. But I do like to joke around. If you know me, you know that. I'm always sending, you on Messenger. I'm sending little funny memes and different stuff, and I enjoy doing that and sharing that part of myself with people. And I'm glad to know that I can take that with me and maybe bring it back when I'm recycled.
Yeah.
And that's something that it gives me comfort.
Yeah.
Knowing that. So.
One of my friends is a past life regressionist. And she believes we're recycled also. She sees it a lot. But
go ahead.
For instance, my sewing. You see, I quilt, I sew, I make all kinds of stuff.
Right.
I haven't been sewing very long. My husband bought me a sewing machine when I was like, on a whim, "Hey, you know what? I'd like to start sewing." And he's like, "All right." So he bought me a sewing machine from Costco. It was a Costco special. About 15 years ago, maybe. So I was like, I'm going to learn to make aprons. And that's what I started out making. I didn't really know what I was doing, and somehow learned to sew and just took it and ran with it. And then my friend, who is the past life regressionist, her daughter was getting married, and her daughter asked me to make her wedding dress. And I said, sure, I can make it. And my mom said, "You can't make a wedding dress." And I said, "Why can't I?" And she said, "Have you ever made a wedding dress before, Jennifer?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, how do you know you can just make one?" I'm like, "Why can't I, though?" Anyway, I told her what was in my head. I built this wedding dress around this girl, and the wedding
Uh-huh.
dress turned out beautiful. It wasn't easy, and it was a lot of hard work, but
Nice.
I did it. And then the past life regression is her mother looked at me and she goes, "Do you ever wonder how you just know how to do shit?" And I looked at her and I'm like, "Actually, I have wondered that." Because usually when I want to do something and I just pop right in and I will excel super fast and I master things really easy. It's
Yeah.
everything comes really easy when I'm interested. And she said, "Do you ever wonder this about yourself?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I actually have wondered how I just know how to do stuff." And she said, "Because you did it in another life."
Right.
She said, "You were probably a tailor in a past life or a dressmaker."
You could have been, and that's the
Yeah.
great thing is that there's things that I could do that I know I have never watched a YouTube video on. I know I've never learned this in school or anywhere else or from family members, but yet I can do it, and it
Yeah.
just makes it just clicks and makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Crazy. But she says, "Do you ever wonder how all these things that you do that you're really good at, you just know how to do them?" And I'm like, "I have wondered." But she says, "You have done them in a past life." She said, "Generally for people, if you are all of a sudden really good at something and you haven't really learned a lot about it or tried really hard, but you're really good at it, it's because you've known how to do it through your other lives."
wow,
Hmm.
I guess that makes sense to a degree. The only reference I've ever heard about recycling, lives that people are recycled, the spirits are in their knowledge, is when I was studying about the Druids. And I know they didn't have any written history, but a lot of other cultures that interacted with them, like the Greeks, the the the, the Romans, and all, even the Muslims that were in Turkey and Saudi Arabian area, they had dealings with the Druids, and they were always talking about their belief in recycling each other, that their lives are recycled, that everything's on a wheel, and it just constantly comes around. And now,
Yeah.
you talk about the Buddhists and the Hindus believe in that. And
Yep.
if you actually look at it, Christianity to a point is like that because we're going to be reborn into heaven, according to them. So,
Yeah.
everything is in a cycles. Everything's going to be cycled, and I just think that if it isn't true, and no matter what you believe, we're living in cycles, and
Yes.
we're all going to be reborn. You know, for good or for bad, and we're going to bring that knowledge with us. And we may not understand where that comes from. We may not know our desire, but that's where I do firmly believe that's where it's desired. It's just like I love truck driving. My degree in college is environmental sciences. It has nothing to do with truck driving. But here I am, a truck driver, because I love driving. And,
Hmm.
you know, I do firmly believe I was a drover back in the day. I was the guy that had the wagons that pulled you across, pulled your goods from town to town in the 1800s.
Hmm.
I was the guy that led the mules, the mule teams,
Yeah.
back in Europe, you taking crops in and out. I firmly believe that. I can't prove it. I've never had anybody do a regression on me or anything. But, you know, where else did this desire to become a truck driver come from?
Oops.
You
Yeah.
know, I love nature, and that's the reason why I went into environmentalism. But,
Hmm.
my desire to drive overdid that. And that's what I firmly believe. That,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're all these things for a reason. And I was a nurse for 30 years. And even though I don't practice that anymore, I am still a healer. I make teas. I heal people with all my herbal stuff. Um, and, and with food, I believe.
that,
'Cause I
that, that
like to
that's
make
like
people happy.
that, that's like my mead that I've been making. I'm using it as a vessel itself to carry medicinal herbs and their benefits. Like I'm making a batch right now that's got cinnamon in it. It's got allspice berries, and it has cloves. All three of those are great. You know,
Mhm.
uh, uh, herbs for
Yep.
for aches and pains, for swelling, for your brain, for your eyes,
Anti-inflammatory.
everything. Right.
Yep.
And people don't realize that when people were making things like that, it was because they had the knowledge that was passed on, even carried through, about how they're going to do their medicinals, and that's how they and that's how they were able to. Drying does fine, but in drying out your herbs, you lose the potency, whereas the alcohol you do not, and that's what I'm looking at. And I had no knowledge that I knew this, and then all of a sudden one day I said, "Okay, let's make some mead." Where did that knowledge come from? Yeah, I watched it. After I made my first batch, I went and watched a YouTube video. I'm like, well, I got that right. Good guess. And it's just, you're just born with something. And I believe that if you're born with that innate knowledge, it's from a past life, then you're just carrying it through.
Well, John, thank you for joining us, and hope to have you back soon.
I enjoy myself. I'm glad to be able to talk to your viewers, and maybe they can find something they can relate with. And I would love to come back sometime.
All right. Well, we'd love to have you back. Okay, I'm going to say goodnight, all, and I'll see you again next week.